expense side of that, we were spending about $200 per every permit to have our village engineer come out and do a permit for a fence. So we were losing $120, $130 every time he came out. And if there was a complication or more work, then double. So I was able to learn quickly, with that art, learn quickly how to be a building inspector on non-new residential construction, non-new commercial construction.
Yeah.
And just do all of these permits, and I can tell you, we've saved probably $15,000 to $20,000 on the expense side for the engineer. That's why those numbers went from, when I started here, $50,000 a year down to about $20,000 a year for engineering, because that was a big hit to the expense line.
Yeah.
Because we didn't want to raise at that time fees
Yeah.
for those services to match it out, because that would be above and beyond what other villages are doing. We didn't want to discourage that.
Mhm.
So we came up with an alternative.
Yeah, so Administrator Stratton has actually been doing a lot of the administrative grunt work that the time it takes to go out and look at
Yep.
the actual permit.
Inspect it, review the plats, look
Yeah.
at the easements, look at the right of ways.
I mean, there's still some coordination with the engineer, but it's not a engineer that's, got much larger fees associated with being an outside consultant. So we are saving on that side of it.
Well,
We're not saving, we're just eliminating losses.
let me add to that, Trevor, as well, is that if we run into a situation, which we have, where it's a little bit more complicated,
Yeah,
then I would invite the engineer in, but under the ordinances, we also have the ability to recover costs. And the people know that, the permittee knows as we come in, hey, whatever additional costs come above and beyond the permit fee, we're gonna have to recover that from it, we'll charge it. And they've been understanding of that as a result of that. So we come into this thing zero base.
yeah. So if you're looking at that, do they have this document?
That one they don't, but I did make copies.
Okay.
Think of that, it might be something you want to pass out.
Yeah.
This is just a draft form of what he's reviewing now.
So it's just on page 3 of it. It's just a simple Excel spreadsheet that has,
It's a little bit more detailed information.
it has some proposed revenue estimates of where we could land regarding these individual sources of income. So talking about the building permits, talking about everything that just happened with the stay-at-home orders, the slowdown in new construction, residential structures like new houses, and that being shifted to accessory structures, fences, pools, sheds, things along those lines. Seeing a 50% drop off in that appropriated amount of $15,000, and knowing that we're already 3 months into this fiscal year, and there's not been a huge upswing. We're not back to pre-COVID numbers, pre-COVID thinking, anything along those lines, and then potential further stay-at-home orders and slowdowns. So we may be overestimating, which would be a bad thing to do, but we could potentially set that proposed building permits line item at $10,000, which would be a 33% loss in that revenue line item. I still think that might be a little aggressive, but we could assume that.
There's a couple of things I should add to that on building permits. One of the things we're losing out a lot in is roofing and siding and extended driveways. We don't permit roofs, we don't permit siding. We've had many roof jobs go out there. Now, the requirements for the permit are not that substantial. I mean, we're not gonna look at, do you have an ice shield or anything else, or you're complying with the 1996, we don't do that for any of that. But issuing the permit, making sure they're properly licensed, insured, and everything else is something our office can do. Charge a fee for that, even if it's equal to $50. That's still a fee that comes in to offset that and helps protect the residents from any kind of issues that might come up, which we've had to deal with poor contractors coming in and asking them, you're no longer permitted to do work on this project. That was a bit bad. But that's one of the things we might want to consider as a part of this. And I think embedded in that $10,000 is consideration of either one of two things. One is the potential for increased fees, but I know we don't want to go there. Or the other thing is consideration of adding additional permit fee requirements like the three I mentioned as a part of that. But anyway, because some of these things we need to regulate a little bit more.
Yeah, and there's a lot of municipalities, towns, cities, states, all across Illinois that have a lot more revenue sources that make their village operate and provide funds to offer the services that individuals want, that make communities nice. But it's a tough decision, especially when you're starting from zero and not even doing anything regarding, like you said, whether it's a roof permit or, various different things. So that's another different decision. But let's establish what our revenues are gonna look like right now without that, because we have to, right? We can't assume, we can't do what the General Assembly does a lot of times and assume that something is going to pass and create a a prospective revenue source that never comes in, and then formulate a budget based on revenues that never were enacted. So we have listed a $10,000 appropriation for that line item, knowing that $7,700 would only come in through 11 months of last fiscal year. Are you comfortable with establishing $10,000 as the revenue source, or do you want to shore that back a little bit to say $8,500, which would be somewhat more realistic, unless there's an uptick in terms of new housing starts sometime? But
How
that's
much
gonna,
do we have right now?
that's come in so far for this fiscal year. I don't think I have that right in front of me without taking some time to
I don't have my
search,
computer.
maybe
If I
in these
have a computer, I can
documents.
run it real quick. Nobody can grab mine. No,
Yeah,
it's
go
not.
ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. Go ahead, I grabbed that. I can-
Because I can't see it changing a whole lot
Right.
next year compared to,
Those different, now these increased fees that we just talked about with driveways, and siding, that is something what we would incorporate in for this next fiscal year.
You could potentially, yes.
But that's not, the 10,000 not counting that right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Realistically, it would probably be around, you should probably be around well, let's just say, if you had, $7,703 come in over 11 months, divided by 11 months, that's $700.27. So I add that to 7,703, our number would realistically look like $8,403.27. About $8,500, yes. If you just simply broke that down by month. So if you did include some
Probably not a bad thing to do then.
fees associated with that, going forward, and I think a lot of towns do stuff like that.
Well, I know
Maybe
that,
not
I
on
mean-
siding, maybe not,
What-
on certain remodels, what's that?
No, go ahead, please.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, what we said, the potential is there for increasing these fees,
Mm-hmm.
then that's something that we're gonna have to look at pretty quick
Yes, absolutely,
to incorporate if we so choose to do so.
absolutely.
so we don't have permits for siding
No,
roofs.
no, not, if you're
Well,
doing
roofs
it,
alone right now we would have made a killing. I think everybody got a new roof.
even if, our fees,
One, 2 weeks.
I can
know my mom
tell
did.
you, think about, we have not increased fees.
You can do it too.
Well, I don't know about increasing, but I just
Or
think
even
that
establish-
anytime, I know in the city of Springfield, you have to have a permit for a roof, a siding, and all of it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
mean, I just assumed that probably.
No,
What are the other
Village of
things?
Sherman's very, very small town-ish when you
Yeah.
think about what we actually do administratively and operationally, especially for what we actually have here and what people think.
But I don't think
of the village.
$50, I think people would just assume that.
Most people assume that there's something, that we get a lot of calls, like I'm gonna do a remodel or whatever, I'm gonna do X, Y, and Z, and it's just common knowledge and, common sense that there's always something associated with that, because there's things that that county needs to know, the village needs to know regarding, you know, what's taking place. And that's a lot of times why these things are incorporated into the certain building permit process.
Yeah.
And so
I
we.
mean, not that it's gonna, like, you're not gonna make money in shelter.
No, and the whole, the thing is to not like make millions, but it's to recoup some of our offset costs, recoup some, you know, recover
But I
some
think
various
that's an
different
easy
costs.
thing, you know, $50 for a roof, and what do you have to do?
Yeah,
There's not much to it.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing is, remember that every time that we do a building permit, let's say someone builds a pool and they put a permit, I mean, the permit fee's only $50, but once we set that permit up, the township at the end of the month is notified, the county's
Yeah.
notified, and you know this.
Yeah,
And then they'll go out and they'll reassess it. And
Right.
I've had people call me on the phone saying, why do I want to buy a building permit for $50? Well, because it's required by ordinance. Yeah, but now I got my tax bill and I see it went up by X number of dollars just because I put that in, because the way you assessed it. So,
well, yeah, because they charge. for
you've
that.
improved the property and you've
Right.
increased the value, so
Right.
that's a good thing.
and so.
And it helps all the other taxing districts as well.
Right,
Right, and that helps, you know, capture the true cost, the true assessment of a property.
yeah,
And then it funds schools, helps
Yeah.
children, helps pay teachers, helps do a lot of things. Helps, you know, ultimately village budget and operations. So that's why a lot of, you know, other entities have this simple process in place. So we'll go with $8,500 right now because we have to be real.
Well, one of the other things we're discovering in the building permit process is that it all comes under Julie. So our guys, the public works guys will go out and they'll do the locates for the sewer system or whatever it might be. So one of the issues that has come up is that I review those permits at those Julie requests when they come in. In the last 2 days, today and last week, I found 2 Julie locates for 2 pool systems are being put in without permit. So they got the number on it, I call up the owner and I go through the process and I say, you know, or we'll find somebody, but usually you find it in a neighborhood where there's no HOA that's active. So there's a lot here, there's no HOA, so they're not looking constantly. So we'll see some put up, and we'll catch them, and we don't find them, we just ask them to, let's go through the process. As long as there's no serious issues, we can go through and get it done.
Here's what, I mean, and that's what I wanna say, because I see it like daily. Like, daily, I see this. The amount of work that Mike Stratton is doing for this town, like he just told you. That's so, I mean, there is so much tedious work that has to take place as an administrator. We don't have any staff on the administration side. We gotta start looking to build our budget in different facets in order to employ part-time help or full-time help or even qualified, talented college students that can do a lot of the legwork and get it to Mike's desk, things like that. Or even assist public works or police department. But there's a lot of stuff that gets done by Mike that typically should be done by somebody, you know, that it's not the village administrator, but he's doing. And that's what we need to work towards. But there's also a lot of things, not any fault of his own, that slip through the cracks. I mean, there is no shortage of work in this town. And there is no shortage of the amount of people that contact, you know, the village wanting this done, that done, whatever. And every day's a new day. And it's like, this is a top priority that day, but then boom, there's tons more things that are new priorities this day, this day, this day. And it just gets to be such a big backlog, it's hard to get through. I mean, our public works department, we're doing this with 3 full-time guys, 2 permanent part-timers, and some summer help. And it's just, it's not feasible. I mean, we gotta be able to have staff to do everything that just needs maintained and just needs done in the administrative work. And so that's why it's gonna be even more difficult this next budget year when you see like 50% drop off in the building permits. Small line item source, but still, or a 10.23%, you know, drop off in the income tax. That's $46,000, you know, just in that one item source alone. So, let's move to the fines. So it says fines, state and county, this is, was appropriated last year at $15,000. So through through March of this year, we were at $10,052.95. So the and this is for police citations, and Chief Banger is in attendance, and maybe you can offer and lend some background on why, you know, fines may have fallen off, less activity, people staying at home, just various different things like that. I don't know, can you like give us a quick 101 as to why the fines revenue line item source would be down 20%?